I was annoyed with working on my bench at that point. It wasn't enjoyable anymore. But he didn't just walk by my balcony. He stood and he watched. So, I paused my music, I turned around, and we ended up chatting for almost half an hour. I found out who he was, I found out what he had done for work, I found out what his church background was. All it took was a little bit of flexibility on my part. Sure, I had to finish my bench another day, and we didn't get to sit on it because it wasn't done. But I made a new friend in the building. I got to hear his story. And after I got to know him a little bit, I wasn't annoyed when his car was parked over into my spot, because it wasn't just a car anymore. I had a face, I had a name, I had a story of who drove that car. Who is my neighbor? When we make the definition of who our neighbor is too broad, we can easily make excuses for not being able to reach out and love everyone. Of course, I can't help everyone in the city. I can't get to know everyone in the city. But if we take the commandment as literally as possible, we have the chance to focus. We have the chance to focus on just a few people to build relationship with. Galatians 5:14, for the whole law is fulfilled in one word. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. So where do we start? How do we begin to love our neighbors? I believe that as humans, each of us desires to be known, to be recognized, to be seen. I'm sure many of you understand this feeling. When you haven't run into someone in a little while, when you run into this person that you haven't seen in years, and they're able to call you by name. That's a good feeling. It's a good feeling when somebody knows your name, at least for me. It makes me feel important. It makes me feel special when someone has taken the time to know my name. This is where the rubber hits the road a little bit in this sermon series. So I'd like to lay out a very practical challenge to start off this series. Perhaps for some of you it might hurt a little bit. It hurt me when I first took on this challenge. If you received a bulletin this morning, I'd like you to pull out your insert and hold it up. All right, so now you've held it up. So now I know you have it, so now you can't back down on my challenge. Up on the screen, you'll see a similar chart. I know that not all of us live in a very structured neighborhood, especially in Steinbach where the streets like to go all kinds of different directions. Many of us don't live in a grid like this. But here's the challenge. Hang that insert on the fridge. Your house is in the middle. My challenge is, can you fill out the names of your 8 closest neighbors? If you live in an apartment building, those neighbors may be up above you, below you. Just your 8 closest neighbors. If you live in a cul-de-sac, maybe not a grid, take the challenge as your 8 closest neighbors. First names, last names, children's names. If you're able to do that, can you write down a piece of relevant information for each household? And I don't mean what sort of car they drive, or what kind of flowers they have planted out front. I mean pieces of information that you would get only from conversing with them. Where did they grow up? What are their hobbies? And if you're able to do names and a relevant piece of information, then the final part of my challenge is, can you list an in-depth piece of information about one of them? What do they fear most? What kinds of things do they dream of doing in the future? What would they say about God? This challenge will take you from not knowing your neighbor's names, saying, "Hey man," from your driveway, to "Hey Mike," to "Hey Mike, how are you doing?" These will be the transitions you'll go through. The authors of The Art of Neighboring, the book that we're following this series, have found that only 10% of people can list all 8 names. They estimate that only 3% of people can come up with a relevant piece of information for each home. And that less than 1% can fill out an in-depth piece of information about one of their neighbors, or 8 of their neighbors, sorry. What would happen if we knew our neighbors? What sort of change would come about, not only in our neighbors' lives, but in the lives of our entire community? Let's think about this for a little bit. I estimate that we have about 100 households represented in the church this morning. Maybe I'm a little bit off, but I'm not very good at math. So we're going to go with 100 households represented this morning. If we estimate on those 100 households getting to know 8 of their neighbors, that's 800 households in Steinbach. 800 households that have been impacted. 800 households with a new friend that they can count on. Now, a note of caution. I don't want you to turn this into a project. People are not projects. So walking around to your neighbors this afternoon, collecting names, is not necessarily what I'm challenging you to. Maybe a good start. What I'm challenging you to is to consider beginning genuine relationships, genuine friendships with these people. Not because I told you to, but because you sense a genuine concern for your neighbors, a genuine concern for their physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Now for another shocking statement. This isn't about them coming to Christ. I know that might sound shocking coming from your pastor. Of course, we would love to see our neighbors come to a genuine relationship with Christ as their Savior. Of course we want that. But this idea is first about us genuinely wanting to have a friendship with them, wanting to have an impact on their life. And hopefully, maybe someday, we might be the right time to talk to them about Jesus. It may be right away. It could be in a week. It could be in a month. Or it could be years before people are ready to hear about Jesus, to have an honest, open conversation about Jesus. It could take time. Stick this insert on your fridge. And in the weeks and months to come, see how much you can fill out. If you're really interested in pursuing this topic more for yourself, there are copies of the book available in the foyer. And I encourage you, if you want to pursue this, if you want to read more up on this, grab yourself a book in the foyer. If you're able to give a small donation to help recover some of the cost, that's great. There's a box there you can stick that in. The books, if you're interested, were about $7 a book. But I'm not interested too much in recovering the cost. If you want to help, great. If you want a book, take a book. Don't let the cost stand in your way. If you're really committed to the art of neighboring, to this idea of getting to know your neighbors, please take a book. Now, in addition to the sermons, you'll see on the back of that chart, in addition to the sermons, for the next 3 weeks, I'm also going to be leading a discussion here at the church about this topic. We want to dig further than just a morning sermon. We're going to open it up to discussion on Wednesday evenings for the next 3 weeks. Care groups are encouraged to discuss this topic as well. I'll be preparing a little short debrief video every single Monday. Those videos are going to be posted on our YouTube page, so you can find them there for care groups. And then there's going to be discussion guides sent out to the care groups each week as well to use. Now, if you're not part of a care group, if you'd like to be part of a care group, or really anyone, you are welcome to join us here on Wednesday evenings. I encourage especially those who are interested in joining a care group, this is going to be the place to be. This is going to be kind of the starting platform for care groups for the year as well. So if you're looking to join a care group, join us here on Wednesday evenings in the Heritage Hall. But again, that is welcome to anyone. Who is my neighbor? I invite you to consider this in the coming weeks. And I look forward to digging further into this topic. I'll invite the music team up.
Let's stand together. Who is my neighbor? The answer was the one who showed him mercy. The answer was not the Samaritan. I don't know, for some reason that struck me today. He couldn't even say the word, the Samaritan. I mean, maybe that's coincidence, maybe that's not. The one who showed him mercy. God is going to call you, hopefully, I mean, that's what God does, to do things that you are not used to do, that are uncomfortable, hopefully.